It's time for Talkin Tauntauns, your Star Wars source at AIPTcomics.com.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Talkin Tauntauns. I am Jim Lahane, and with me as always is Nicole Herview.
Hello there.
Hello. And with us, making a return after a very long time, we had him back on episode 14 of our show. And actually, it is still one of our most downloaded shows ever.
Well done.
Making his triumphant return, it's Tom Spina.
Wow. Thank you. Very nice to be back. I didn't realize that that episode 14 would be such a hit.
Yeah.
I mean, let's see what we can do this time. I don't know. It's a lot to live up to.
You're right. We need to crush those numbers.
That's right. That's right.
The pressure's on, Tom.
I know. Yeah. No, and it's we're doing this. So it's a morning recording, and it kept me awake all night just thinking about that. Like, what am I going to bring today? I'm going to just do my best.
We believe in you.
Thank you. Yes, that's appreciated.
Now that you're tired and groggy and just been focusing on what you were going to bring.
I'm one with the podcast with me. No, it didn't work. Yeah.
So how are you doing this morning, Tom?
I'm doing great. It's a weekend morning, so all joking aside, a little more rested than usual. It's been a particularly busy couple of months at the shop. So, anytime I get to do one of these podcasts is almost a nice way to like force myself not to do anything for an hour or so. So that's terrific and appreciated.
So for anybody who does not know who Tom is CEO, founder. I don't know like what your business title would be.
Founder's probably good. CEO sounds a lot more official than I feel ever.
So founder of both Tom Spina Designs and Regal Robot. And if you have been paying attention to any Star Wars merchandise releases, Regal Robot comes up everywhere because they are the go-to place for the non-mass produced, fine quality stuff, Star Wars stuff, particularly in this case, that collectors kind of are drawn to.
That's pretty nicely said. Yeah, I like that. I personally like the use of the word stuff. I know there's like a lot of companies that would get all and like, oh, no, you got to be real. It's like, no, for us, it's like cool Star Wars stuff, rare Star Wars stuff that no other licensed company would ever even look at or consider doing. And we're like, no, that's our stuff. So, yeah, for sure.
The way I organize folders on my computer, almost every one has the word stuff in it. It's just,
it's like how Rick Baker and those guys named Cantina characters. It's like, everything has guy at the end of it. It's like, oh, there's the skull guy, the fly guy, the goggle eye guy, the band guy, wolf
squid guy.
Yeah. Bat demon guy is one of them. Spider guy is what he calls Muftak. That's a fun one. But yeah, it's just, that's your nomenclature. I like it. I approve.
So, like I said, Tom is infamous. One of those.
I wouldn't purport to be either, but I'll take.
Well known for doing these super high-end quality stuff that a lot of them are affordable to everybody.
Hey, thanks
a lot of
for
them
that.
are not affordable too.
Yeah. We've been, it's funny. We added Indiana Jones recently too. That's a part of why the last 2 months have been as crazy as they've been, because we've been balancing now Star Wars stuff and Indiana Jones stuff and releases for each. And honestly, just production of stuff has been tough because we do so much of it in-house in our New York studio. We are, furiously working little elves. At the moment, they are working on our 1-to-1 Tusken Raider busts, We have the first 50 of them just about done. They're doing the parts for the breather canister. That's the last element there. Okay. And we're waiting for the foam inserts to come in so that we can get the first 50 of those shipped. And then they have another 50 of those in the works, as well as another round after that. And at the same time, they're working on the Yak Face maquette edition. They're working on the Nurhachi urn prop replica from Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. We have just started on the Holy Grail chalice from
I saw that release post,
which we just sold. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the 9 Num edition is just starting the resin side of things. It's interesting. You know, you always have different things in different phases. So you'll have, you know, a bunch of people putting distressed wraps on Tusken Raiders while someone else is running rotocasters to get the heads and the torsos cast on those, while someone else is pouring resin for the yak faces, while someone is, you know, putting paint on a different maquette. We just wrapped up paint on the first waves of the Grogu maquette. So like that was going, it's always a ton of moving parts. And then of course, in the mix of this, we have the Tom Spina Designs work. We are doing, you know, always doing custom mannequins for things. We're doing restoration. At the moment, we have 3 wax figures going, a couple of head-sized restorations of original props from films, and a handful of other bigger restorations that are longer-term projects that just take a lot of time. But yeah, it's been busy.
Yeah. Sounds like it. I'm really interested in that restoration and conservation piece. Like, that is so fascinating to me. I was on your website and I saw one. This is a niche one, so bear with me. But Sam from Trick or Treat, that's one of my favorite movies, period. Like, I love Trick or Treat. So that, can you tell me about where the heck that came from? Just out of my own morbid curiosity.
Sure. No, well, it's funny. I don't even think of that as that niche, like, because I feel like, especially with our fans, like, that's where they live, you know?
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, that came through, it was a private collector. And and I'm just trying to make sure I'm considering the right one, because we've done a few things from Trick or Treat. Awesome. But it you know, the way a lot of stuff finds us is through private collectors. There's a bunch of the work that we do that's for either, you know, museums or for archives, or auction houses directly, where, you know, they're going to be auctioning something off and they want to make sure that it's in the best possible condition before it goes up for sale. But a lot of times, you know, there's a ton of original prop material that's going into collectors' hands, private collectors' hands these days. You have Prop Store, who has really expanded the whole sort of original prop hobby, I think, beyond even what, prior to that, you know, there was Sotheby's and Julian's and Christie's and all of that, who would do their prop auctions here and there. And then you had a couple of specialized companies that would maybe come in and do a particular film sellout or something like that. But Prop Store has really opened it up to a new audience, and I think they've drastically expanded the number of collectors out there through what they've been doing. And it's been really cool to see on our side, because, you know, we can always tell when there's an auction coming, because we get a lot of people who will send us pictures of something that's in the auction to say, hey, if I get this, how much work is this going to take? Or what would be a good way to store this or display it or conserve it? And so we'll do that sort of pre-auction consulting. But then also, you know, there was an auction last, I think it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week. And I know that means next week is going to be a busy week for us, because we are going to be getting all the people who won things in that auction coming to us and saying, hey, I just got such and such costume from such and such movie, and I need a custom mannequin for it. Or I just got this piece, I need it conserved. Or what do you have, you know, what can we do to display this thing cool in a cool way? So that's, you know, where does the stuff come from? How does it get to us? That's like the number one way.
Cool.
And then, what we do with it once it gets here, that's a conversation that, could go on forever because there's
Sure.
so many options. But but yeah, no. And I mean, with Sam, it's just one of those things where I'm always amazed what turns up, and it's like, you think of stuff like that as, well, that's just gonna, that's with someone that made the movie, or that's with the producer. Like, that's not,
Right.
that's too good to get out from that movie, or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it is amazing to me how much stuff really, does get out there into private hands, and to see the different types of people that bring it in. I think that's I know I'm veering way off from the original question here.
No, this is fascinating. Go on.
What's interesting to me is, film prop collecting used to be thought of as, the wealthiest of the wealthy's hobby, right?
Yeah.
It was always like kind of the joke. It's like the walking into the millionaire's mansion and seeing an original piece of artwork on the wall, and then there's some prop from a movie and you'll have to make a comment about it or whatever. The hobby as a whole became democratized, I think, over the last 25 years. And it really is specifically that time period, because prior to that, it was such a
kind
niche.
of like, didn't eBay kind of start kicking off the democratization of all the
I think
In the
to a
internet in
degree,
general, probably.
you had, prior to that, you had two types of people that had stuff from the movies. You had industry connected folks who either worked on a movie and kept it, or who knew people that worked on movies, and that's how they collected. And then you had very wealthy people who could afford whatever they wanted and just, kind of bought their way to whatever they would like to have. And yeah, I mean, eBay definitely made a big change in that. Prop store and the rise of, them and Prop Masters and ScreenUse.com, who's no longer around, and some other sites as direct to consumer sellers of this material, that definitely changed a lot. But it's also just awareness, right? Like, prior to the internet really hitting, you had to physically be somewhere these props were and connect physically, emotionally, whatever, in-person chat with the right people to get anything.
Yeah.
And now it's like we all have access. And for me, when I started collecting original props, it was just a question of like, wait, you could actually own this? Like, that's
right.
Like, I thought no one could. I thought the studio had that. I thought, it's the sort of thing you see on display at MGM down in Disney World, or, in some Lucasfilm Archives tour, but people don't have that.
Right.
And now it's like people have that, and a lot of people do. And it's really neat to see the hobby growing that way. So yeah, it fascinates me to no end, as you can probably tell by how long that answer was.
Yeah, no, it's very, to quote Indiana Jones, like, that belongs in a museum. That's what I would think. Like, originally, and now it's like, oh, you can own that. You can have that. That's incredible to me. Like, I also saw the Vader costume on your website, and I'm like, someone's got that? Like, that's insane to me.
That was a stunner. I mean, look, we've been very lucky to have a lot of iconic stuff come through the shop. And I've personally, been very fortunate in that we do a lot of work with the archives. In the past, we've done a bunch of conservation work and restoration with them. Currently, we're doing a lot of research work there. So I've seen a lot of the original costumes and things like that. I've handled a lot of that stuff. I've seen, and we've all seen the costumes on tour, or you'll see the costume they'll have on display somewhere or whatever. There was a costume on display at MGM in Disney for a long time at Star Tours, as you were coming out of the exit, where it's now just, they still have the grading up, but it's just blocked off. Like, there was an incredible original Darth Vader costume behind glass there that was amazing. I don't know why they don't put something in that space. Call us, Disney. We have stuff. We can do this.
For the love of God.
I like how high aspirations you think of the listenership.
Oh, they're
of this
listening
show.
to us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, no. I would assume whoever's head of Imagineering or whatever is just sitting around going like, wait a minute. Actually, it's funny. It occurs to me that I know the exact person to call about that, and I'm going to have to do that later because I would love to see them put something back in that space. I know. Yeah. Thanks for the idea, guys. Got to go.
Hey, no worries.
But Tom's got connections and things to do.
Yeah. When I'm there in a few months and I see something coming out of Star Wars, I'll be like, hey,
Tom made a call. All right.
Tom did it.
But no, I know a guy, but so that Vader costume came through a prop store auction. It was something that they had turned up. It's a tour costume from the first film. So, and the cool thing about the tour costumes from the first film was that most of the components were made by the same people that made it for the film, the same exact way, same materials, same level of detail, all of that stuff. And the one difference is the helmet. The helmet was molded and cast off of the screen-used helmet and then duplicated by Rick Baker, which makes not a lot of sense. Because everybody, just thinks of him as the monster guy.
Yeah.
But that was something that he did. And that, to me, is like a really special connection right there with this suit. And if I remember right, they actually managed to screen match the helmet to a pretty famous photo shoot, that like Mylar background photo shoot. And I believe it's even the same photo shoot where they did the close-up of the helmet that winds up on the poster for Empire, the black background poster with Starfield. But yeah, so I mean, the costume alone is special. The character is as iconic as they come. And the challenge of the way it's made, for us was big, because you're dealing with aging leather pieces, which you don't want to damage. You are dealing with fabric pieces that you want to drape and sit right. You are dealing with fiberglass and plastic pieces that have aged. In some cases, you're dealing with some missing components that we had to replace and come up with modern recreations of this vintage stuff that still feels old. And everything any little piece that we did put onto it, we had to make feel old, because we wanted to make sure that nothing stood out from what we were doing. It's the worst thing you can do when you're doing this sort of restorative work is to have your work seen.
It's like when you patch something in a house and you can clearly see the patch as bright as day.
No, at that point, just tear the whole wall down. You've just it's worse. No, for us, so we're having to come up with a mannequin that is Dave Prowse sized. However, it isn't really Dave Prowse sized, because the suit is aging leather and it's shrunk a little bit. So we've got to now do that mannequin in a way that supports the costume the way the costume wants to be supported, and not just, hey, we made a body to Dave Prowse's measurements. And so that was really tricky. It was you're reverse engineering, what does this mix of soft and hard goods need underneath it to look right? And these are all heavy components, so it has to be heavy duty. It has to be able to support everything and stand well and travel well and all of that. So yeah, it was a very, very intense process. There was a lot of work done. Most of our restoration type work was very, very subtle, which, to go with Jim's wall analogy, is actually the harder work to do. But yeah, that was just an honor to work on. It was just something that it's one of those things I have yet to get numb to the stuff that we work on. which is really fortunate. Like I
That's great.
still, I don't just walk past stuff. And it's when that Vader was in the shop, especially towards the end where we had it all set up and we were prepping to do our photo shoot and stuff, you would just walk through the studio and catch it out of the corner of your eye. Go, oh man, and it's weird because we've had plenty of replica Vaders through the shop too. We've done stuff where people have sent us, their costume that they've made or Novo's costume or something like that, and had us do a custom mannequin for it or have us do some sort of theme display. We even did one of those for one of the Disney video game offices at one point. And it's like, as a character, it's cool and it's neat to see there. But there is an element to those vintage costumes that gives them an air of authenticity that you don't get from a crisp replica. It really, like, it feels like you're in the presence of an artifact. You feel like you said, it belongs in a museum. Like, it feels like something in a museum, because that's the whole thing, right? We don't, the thing comes in and we don't make it look brand new. We don't go in and erase that history. So it really is. It's like, how do we maintain that? How do we keep this vibe? Because you really do. You like walk past it and you get the chills. You're just like, oh, that's it. Like, that's real. That's vintage. That's of the era. That's from the same hands that made it for the movie. And it's hard to beat. That's
incredible. Do you know where that piece ended up? Was it a private collector? Was it? Can you even say?
It is. And it's. I believe it's currently on display in Texas at the moment.
Cool.
In a gallery. And I believe the collector's actually public about it. I'm going to add a caution, just not mention by name, but
yeah.
There's it's a wonderful collection he's pulled together, and a fair chunk of it is on display at the moment. And it's nice when folks can do that, when you have pieces of that caliber, to actually share it and give people a chance to get up close with it and get that same feeling I got. Like, that's really cool to be able to share.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So also, one of your, besides just Regal Robot and Tom Spina designs, you also do a lot of the panel, like the convention panels on the, mostly from what I've seen, Mos Eisley Cantina and Jabba's Jabba's Palace, and it's all the background minutia and like how those things got put together. And you, I saw one, and I'll never forget. You blew my mind. You and Pablo showed the fact that Max Rebo plays with his feet.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a revelation.
He doesn't have any arms. Those are his feet.
It's the sort of thing. I mean, as you can probably tell by the background behind me, I know folks at home aren't seeing this. I'm mildly obsessed with the creatures of Star Wars.
Mildly.
Understandably so.
Mildly is probably not the right word. But I also, but to me, so I met Pablo through, he had a site called the Indexed Trilogy. And I believe he only ever got most of the way through the first film. But what he would do is he would take one frame from each shot in the movie, not each scene, but each shot, if I'm remembering right, roughly. And he would try and pick out something in the background. And so very quickly, he started finding like, oh, this is a reused set piece from later in the movie, but they flipped it upside down and now it's over here. Or this character over here is the same one that's over there, but he's wearing a different coat. Or this was this or whatever. And my favorite thing that he pointed out in that, and the next time you watch the movie, you are never going to be able to unsee this. He called this one Life Debt Schmeif Debt. And when Greedo interrupts Han, when Han is trying to leave and Greedo stops him going somewhere solo, Chewie is still right next to him and just keeps walking. And it really, like, if you watch the scene, you don't really think about it, but like once you know that, you can see him in the background and he just keeps going. He's like, oh, you're on your own.
See ya. Or his thought is like, well, that guy's dead now. Okay, like Han's got this. Like,
guess
I'm
I'll
gonna go
do
start
it.
up the
Dead.
Falcon. It's
Yeah,
fine. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure someone else will come along. I can co-pilot.
Yeah.
But or he's like, hey, I just made myself 17. You know, like, now I get to keep the whole amount.
Yeah. Right. Oh my god.
But yeah,
That's funny.
So it was through that I met him, and so that's a shared sort of passion there, and that's what started all of these panels we were doing. The Max Rebo one, I think that we first talked about at FanX? Was that like
it was Salt Lake that I saw?
Salt Lake, yeah, that's a fun show. I haven't been in a few years, but it was a really, really nice. It's just a fun show. It's like the right level of craziness in terms of the crowd.
Well, when I lived there, that was one of those things. Like I signed up, and I'm like, oh, this sounds really cool, and then they immediately got in over their heads and had to change the entire convention center that they were holding the original one while they were planning it. And so it turned out to be like a good series of shows while I was out there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so Max Rebo. So what's really neat is this kind of all comes full circle to the maquette stuff that we've been doing. So for Return of the Jedi, when they were making these characters, and I know you guys know this, but for anybody who's listening at home that maybe doesn't, when they started designing all the creatures for Return of the Jedi, they made small scale clay maquettes of each one, little hand sculpted sketches, really, of what the character would look like in 3 dimensions. And what's really cool is I think they did almost 90 of them for the movie.
Oh, wow.
90 different creature designs. And they're all really cool. Some are a little goofy. Some are not as great as others, but most of them are amazing, including some of the ones that didn't get used. And almost all of them are still at the archives. And we started doing some of these a few years back. Phil Tippett had the mold for his clay maquette of the Tauntaun. And that was 1-to-1 to the scale of the stop motion puppet too, which was really neat, at 11, 12 inches tall. And because he still had that mold, we were able to get a copy from him, from the mold, to use as a master for a production run of that, and basically give people just a 1-to-1 copy of that original maquette. It was an edition of 250 pieces. They're now sold out. One of my favorite sculptures, just in general, the musculature on that and the way that Phil has built the anatomy on that creature is so good. And I, in particular, I like the head on the maquette. It's a little chunkier than the final stop motion figure's head, which is a little more squished top to bottom. What's neat about it is the maquette is what they sent over to England for Stuart Freeborn's team to make the life-size Tauntauns. So the life-size Tauntaun's head better matches the maquette than the stop-motion one does. It's one of those little inconsistencies in the movies.
Oh, cool.
But so we've been going through this process of going through all of the archives at the maquettes and high-resolution 3D scanning them. And now we've been slowly releasing that as a collection. And so we did the Phil Tauntaun. After that, we did the one of Phil's Jabba the Hutt designs, and Tony McVeigh's Gamorrean, which he did for The Mandalorian season 2.
Nice.
And now we've really dived into what we're calling the archive collection. These are all lineage pieces, stuff that either relates via mold and cast or high resolution scanning to an original piece from these films. And basically, the slogan is "Bring home the archive." We want people to have that same feeling we get when we see this stuff in the archives, when we get to handle the real stuff. So we're trying to just do these warts and all faithful recreations of these original pieces. And the first, official archive collection one was Max Rebo. And we got to bring back what Pablo discovered about those not being his hands. So the old action figure, he's got, little stumpy legs and kind of a diaper, a little sumo wrestler thing.
Yeah.
And he's playing with his hands. When you go back to Phil Tippett's original sketches and the maquette, though, you see that indeed those are his legs and not his arms, and he doesn't have any legs. And here's the one that really blew my mind, and this we revealed at the last celebration. When we were making our replicas of that, one of the girls who was painting at the shop comes up to me and says, because he's got these patterns on his ears on the maquette, and she's just like, "Hey, is this too dark for the pattern on his flippers?" And I'm like, "His what now?" Flippers. Those are slippers. I'm like, I beg to differ. Those are his ears. Silly employee. What do they know? And they just kind of go, "Well, I'm calling them flippers," and walks away. And so I go back in the office and I tell Rob what happened. And I'm like, damn it. Now I have to ask Phil, because, this now could just blow everybody's minds again. So I write to Phil and I say, "Hey, these things on them." And I put an arrow to it. I'm like, what would you call these?
This thing on his head that looks like he hears from?
Right. What would you call that?
What is that, Phil, sir?
So I'm very lucky that I can make that sort of call or email. And Phil wrote back very quickly, all caps, "Flippers."
Get out of here.
I'm like, are you effing kidding me? And by effing, F stands for flippers.
Right.
Are you flippering kidding me?
Yeah,
are you flipping kidding me?
I'm like, I'm never going to hear the end of this at the shop now. But yeah,
so it was never found out. It was that email was
one
deleted.
ever heard that.
It was
Sorry guys, Phil said ears. So Phil said flippers. So there's your double whammy on Max Rebo. Not only does he not have legs or not have arms, but he has flippers and not ears. It's just like, this is that's
amazing.
This is what I live for. Like those moments. It's just, oh gosh, to get that sort of information right from the source. We're very lucky that these guys are still around, guys and girls that worked on these movies, and that they're so willing to still talk about it and share and answer my, unending stream of inane questions about completely insignificant things.
That's amazing. And especially, we just covered the ILM documentary, Light and Magic. We just did 2 episodes talking about that. And Phil is the hero of that. Like, Phil is my favorite person ever right now. So that's pretty incredible to hear. He seems lovely, like, just in general.
He has a wonderfully grumpy vibe.
Yeah.
That's literally what my business card says.
A wonderfully grumpy vibe.
Wonderfully grumpy vibe. Yep.
I mean, the only way I can say it's like crusty. It's like a pie crust. He's sweet, but you got to break through the crust.
Yeah, I get that. I can see that.
But he's got a wonderfully wicked sense of humor, and just on a design side is off the charts. One of my favorites. Just somebody that I am very, very, very lucky I get to interact with on a regular basis and find out silly stuff from. I don't know why he puts up with us. I have to imagine at some point he's just going to say, "No, enough.
Cease. You're done. You're cut off."
Yeah, you're cut off. That's it. It's like, is that Hermie Odel's tongue, or is that thing? Was he eating something and it's hanging out of his mouth? No, like that.
He just responds like, "Stop."
Yeah, we find where the line is that way. Otherwise, you don't know, really.
Unsubscribe.
Blocked. Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It is fun. It is fun.
I've noticed in your Regal Robot collection that you almost exclusively focus on the OT, but you have been kind of piecemeal selecting stuff from The Mandalorian.
Yeah, it's and a piece or two from maybe Obi-Wan. It is if we're OT focused for now, I would say mostly that's down to the feeling that we have a lot to do, and there's so much fertile ground. Um, we definitely have an eye on some stuff from the prequels that really fits our vibe. But as we get into that stuff, it's gotta be organic, and it's gotta fit the type of stuff we want to do. And again, and the prequels are really good for this because they were made in similar ways. There's a lot of pre-production material to draw from. There's all those places we like to play. Those sandboxes are there. So, that's something that's likely. Mandalorian is mainly because that let's face it, was kind of the most popular thing to come out of Star Wars for the longest time. And people wanted to see stuff from it. And we enjoyed the show. So that was good. It does get tricky doing anything from the newer stuff because we don't always get to see the stuff ahead of time. So, sometimes we've got to look and say, well, that would be fun to make, but it's too long of a development period. And by the time we make it, they're going to have 2 other shows out. I don't know if that's going to be relevant anymore. So, we kind of have to sort of juggle a little bit on that. I do like doing things from the older properties because they're so they're deep. There is, and because they've been around so long and because they're settled, there's an internalization that happens to the fans where we absorb it as a movie, then we absorb the making of the movie, and then we absorb the history of the movie. And all of that, mixes together into things that then could be cool to do, that go beyond, well, here's a Darth Vader bust. Oh, here's a Stormtrooper bust. Here's a Boba Fett bust. There are plenty of licensees that do that stuff. We don't need to necessarily go there. But when we do a life-size bust, it's something either no other licensee could do, on at least in the style or to the level we do, like our Chewbacca's maybe, or something no other licensee ever would do, like CZ3, my favorite droid from the Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy. And nice to see him show up a little bit, or that style droid in Mando and things like that every once in a while. But it's you wouldn't be able to do that. You don't have the bench depth, as they'd say in the sports. I know we're all sports people. All of us are very, very.
Clearly.
Sports ball and the one with the pickle now that everybody seems like
What's
this
that
is
about? Yeah.
Nobody
sports territory.
They can't see your video, but you have like sports paraphernalia all over the room.
Sports. Everywhere is sport related.
Just go team, do the thing, win the point everywhere.
Every time. No, that's what they need to do. And but yeah, like that. The older films are going to have that because people have had that much more time to investigate the background, and that's the background's where we like to play.
Yeah, I mean, in that vein, I was going to say, were there ever any ideas for stuff for Regal Robot that you were like, you know what, that's too niche? Is there too niche for Star Wars fans? Does that exist? Like,
Man. So, too niche is a budget question more than anything else with Star Wars fans. For instance, we did a 1-to-1 life-sized bust of the concept art for Bib Fortuna that Ralph McQuarrie did. And this is not the concept maquette that Phil Tippett did that looks like Bib Fortuna, or even the concept maquette that Ken Ralston did that doesn't look like Bib Fortuna, but is still really cool and is shown in some of the books. This is a sketch that Ralph McQuarrie did that looks nothing like Bib Fortuna, that looks a little like some of Chris Walas's early Jabba the Hutt maquettes, and has a big top hat and a collar and bug eyes. And if you go to the Regal Robot website, you can find this on there. It's on the Bust and Archive Collection page. Scroll way down to the custom stuff. So that is something on the surface is 100% too niche.
Sure.
However, if someone has the budget to develop that as a one-off, sure, we love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's if you can cover the cost of getting this through the Disney process, the cost of getting it through Lucasfilm, and the cost of actually, making the sculpt, making the molds, all of that other stuff, we're happy to be as niche as anyone wants.
Amazing.
That's not a cheap endeavor, but
sure,
that's the thing. The other thing though that gets weird is, we'll have people make requests for custom stuff sometimes, and you sort of have to temper it a little bit, because sometimes there is too niche, in this case, that Bib Fortuna. Probably really only one or two people in the world want that, as a life-size bust. And luckily one of them found us. And even if you were doing 2 or 3, it's not going to drastically change the price on that, because just all of that development right there. And the fact that so much of that is handwork at that point, sometimes people will say, and this is not necessarily on the Regal side, this is more on maybe the Tom Spina design side, where it's like, oh, well, I need, let's just say 10 custom tombstones or something like that. And we'll do those all by hand carved and detailed and all of this stuff. And then they're like, well, if I get 20 of them, are they cheaper? And it's like, no, because now we have to make 20 of them. It's not, these are not coming off of a machine where I only start the machine once. Like, it's not printing where it's like, oh, okay, all of your work is in the setup. But like, no, your work is in literally hand making each one of these. And that's kind of what happens on small scale stuff, even with Regal. Our edition sizes are maybe 100 or 150 pieces on a lot of the maquettes, and people ask like, well, wouldn't they be much cheaper if you did 500? And it's like, no, actually, because we still have to make each one of them, and we hand paint them all, and they're not just, rolling off a machine fully printed and painted, whatever. So it's not like injection molded stuff that then gets machine printed with stamps or something. But anyway, it is something interesting where we'll have people ask about a character who they maybe think is niche, but I know that, we could, think about it this way. Pick any creature from Jabba's palace or the cantina, and say, okay, let's do a life-size bust. Whoever the most obscure one you could think of would be. That could be a run for us. Like, you almost couldn't be too obscure on those aliens. Like, you could, sure, like Cantina, maybe you've got Snaggletooth or whatever, the sort of the guys that everybody knows, Walrus Man, Snaggletooth, Greedo, whatever. You get into then your sort of second tier, you got your Duros and, maybe the Devil Guy and stuff like that. Maybe then you get into third tier where maybe there's the Mosep alien. They've called him Walrus on set, but that it's one of those Stuart Freeborn ones, or the Hair Mouse, or those kind of weird ones.
You're skipping over the Ithorian. That's like he's
top tier.
He's top tier.
Top tier.
He's pretty great.
But like you could go the deepest you could on that. The Fly Guy. You could do the land speeder salesman guy. The Skull Guy, the Given, which is one of my favorites. One of the first things I ever, like my first sort of successful sculpt of a Star Wars alien. He's actually
I can
right
see
there,
you can see him on the bottom.
So that was like one of my first successful full head latex Star Wars masks I ever made.
So cool.
And I'm lucky enough now to know John Berg, who made the original for the movie. He's one of my favorite people in the world. We just had a 3-hour conversation a few days ago. So simpatico and one of my favorite people. But I have the original mask now from the film, and it's like so cool to see, the thing I was looking at so closely and trying to recreate, based on only like 1 or 2 photos at the time, of course. And then my recreation side by side, it's like, oh man, it blows your mind. But like we could take that, and let's say someone came and said, oh, I'd love to see the Given, can you do it as a custom piece? I would probably turn it away as a custom offer order, because you could do a run of those. Like I could probably, we could probably do a run of 50 or 75 pieces, and people would bring that into their home. It's like, that's that depth that we were talking about, right? That's that internalizing that people do. So yeah, for things to really be a one-off at this point, like it's got to be super niche. But yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't remember what the question was. I think it was if things could ever be too niche, and I think we just found out no.
Yeah. Yeah, which I suspected, but it's fascinating, like how deep you can get, and also like the ROI on things, right? Like, I get it.
Yeah, it's like, I sometimes think about it like, or try to explain it this way, and this maybe applies more to restoration, but even on developing, some of the Regal stuff, we might put months of time into something, developing it, and it might be a few people working on it. And, someone might say like, oh, well, I just wanted a bust of some creature. Why is it this much money? It's like, well, if, 3 people are like, what do you get paid for 3 months of work at your job? And times that by 3 people, and then some royalties, and then maybe some profits, so the company survives. And, it can add up really, really quickly when you start developing this stuff. But it's, we actually do surprisingly well with it, and I think it's why we can be as niche as we are with some of the maquettes and things like that. Is we keep our development costs very low, and that's intentional, and we try to make sure that every piece that goes out there is as affordable as it can possibly be, and still get the mouse their cut, get our company our cut, and get people something cool in their hands. And that really, if you were to apply the development costs that a lot of bigger companies put on things onto our pieces in the runs that we're doing, the way we're producing them, the prices would be kind of off the charts. But it is important for us to maintain the quality that we do. It's important for us to maintain the authenticity above all, and frankly, on the business side, to have a really nice direct connection from production to packing to customer, and to have as much of what we do in-house as we do is comforting to me as a business owner. And when things like global pandemics hit and everybody freaks out because now they can't get their stuff from China, or their shipping is triple the cost or quadruple the cost coming into the country, or there's shutdowns or whatever overseas. It's and also quality control issues and things like that, not being in person all the time to look over every part. It really is nice for us to be able to say, like, how are the Baby Yoda maquettes coming? I'm going to go walk, a few hundred feet and find out. And, and to be able to see them and literally sit down and work with folks on them. Last week we spent, we had my friend Gordon Tarpley out here at the studio, and we worked a lot of late nights working on Tusken Raiders together. And it's just, all hands on deck. Let's make these.
It's amazing.
I think a lot of the too niche question is, and the fact that a lot of people are fascinated with the OT, is that the prequel trilogy was so well documented compared to the original trilogy. Is that like we found out with Max Rebo, there's so much coming up that you get a story, and so like the niche, his name's, who were you just talking? The Major Domo. Why is his name?
Bib Fortuna.
Bib Fortuna, yeah. Like what you did there, people are going to come in and go, what on earth is that?
Right.
Well, now you have a 5-10 minute story that can go with this piece here. And like pretty much like a lot of this stuff is it's all about the story. Like
every sculpture comes with a Type 5. You can go on Carson with that. It really, it's the sort of thing where you're right. If Max Rebo was a creature thing, we'd have a 10-minute web documentary with Doug Chang telling us why he had no legs, Whereas now we had to uncover that. It was archaeology. It was a discovery. it was interviews and talking with people and looking at sketches and deciphering. And that's a cooler story for sure. And maybe it's more grabbing to people to have it uncovered years later than to have it served to them at the time.
Well, it's a complete change of thought. Like you had assumed this for your entire life.
Right.
We're gonna blow your mind.
Yeah. and you better hold on, because another couple years Phil's going to tell us about the flippers, and then yeah, that was insanity when he wrote back and said flippers. Rob and I are like, are you kidding? Oh, so good.
So we don't want to keep you too long, but we still got a little bit of time. Is there anything that you want to talk about, like upcoming stuff? Like, I know, like, obviously things that aren't announced, you can't announce, you can't even talk about that it exists, but like, what can you talk about?
I'm good for a bit if you guys are, in terms of what's upcoming. So we have very interestingly hit the end of our announced editions at the moment. We announced a bunch of stuff in the beginning of the year. We have now made our way through those. We announced a little bit more when Indie came out, and recently announced our second wave of Indie. We just did that. And anybody who's ever watched any of our, we do live streams from the studio every once in a while on Facebook. And I'll just plug our Facebook group for a moment too. If you are on Facebook, just look up Regal Robot Showcase. It'll come up. We have a little fan group there that is growing very rapidly. We have there's a contest going for Phil Tippett's book right now. So if you happen to get in there in time, you can do that. I don't know when this is going to air, but we do a lot of that kind of stuff, giveaways and things. And we also, when we do these live streams, we'll talk about what's coming. And one of the things that we often wind up doing in the live stream is looking at our board. You'll see me look off to the side, and Rob and I have 2 cork boards stacked now, filled with things that are coming. And I mean packed. But most of that stuff doesn't have an official release date yet, and only a portion of it is even in the sort of Disney pipeline, the sort of Lucasfilm development side of it. But it's all things that have been either somewhat discussed with Lucasfilm, or we've got some development going on our side. So what I'll say is this: a lot is coming, but we're trying to be gentle to our collectors. It serves no one if we make everyone completely broke. So we like to pace our editions and make sure we're not pumping too much stuff out there at the same time. We also like to be nice to the people who work for us, who currently are extremely overworked at the moment and trying to do as much as they can. So we're going to take a month or so, and we're going to get these Tusken Raiders finished. We're going to get the Act Face done. We're going to get Nine Num going and the Nurhachis. And while that's all going, myself and Rob and a couple people are doing the development on the next few pieces. I do know what our next maquette is going to be.
We do not know. We will not know.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll say this. It is, I believe this may be the most popular one that we do. And we are working on an idea to make a numbered edition and a signature edition in this case. And we've come up with an idea to make the signature edition extra special. And if that comes to be, I think people are going to be a little bit blown away by it. We'll see. There's plenty to figure out. But beyond that, maquette, we have been going through the entirety of the Return of the Jedi maquettes and going through the digital work we've done with them and preparing as many of those as we can to get into the edition. We have a few ideas of who will be next after this next one that I am again not mentioning. And then we have a couple of life-sized pieces in the works, some busts that we're working with, and naturally some more things like magnets. We also have a really neat idea for some wall decor that that is in the works that I think people are going to really like as well. So, we're going to have a busy summer behind the scenes, making cool stuff and developing what's coming for the future. And, what I can say to anybody who wants to know what's coming next, stay tuned. Get on the newsletter for Regal Robot. Go to the website, enter your email address. We will not spam you, but when new stuff comes out, we'll share it. And if you like seeing behind the scenes, join that Regal Robot Showcase Facebook group, and you can take a little peek behind the curtain. We'll post up some pictures from the studio, and you can join us in all the fun there.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that you had time to talk about all your upcoming stuff, because you have so many cool things.
It's really my wallet is screaming, sir. So thank you.
Well, I do like that we cover a lot of ground in terms of price too.
You do.
There's
for sure.
We're very well known for the crazy stuff. Oh, they have a $20,000 life-size Chewbacca statue or the Han Carbonite desk or whatever. But then there's $1,000 chairs that you can bring to your home that are either the Cantina or the Emperor or whatever, and they're priced the way you'd get a good chair at a chair store.
Right? Yeah.
Except
that's a chair.
Star Wars. You have
even lower than that.
And then, of course, all of the decor stuff, ranging from $20 to a few $100. There's all sorts of ways that you can put Star Wars in your home that maybe you didn't think about before, but we did, and you can have a little fun with that.
And thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I love the your depth of some of this stuff, like the Mythosaur prototype skull. That I didn't even know was a thing.
Yeah.
Where it's basically a bird
skull looking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the first draft on Boba Fett. Had I think it was technically the pre-Pro 2 costume, so the second pre-production costume had this weird bird skull instead of the Mythosaur skull on his shoulder, or Bantha skull as we called it when we were kids. But so that bird skull was something we thought was really neat, and we had Mio Nakamura had sculpted for the Mythosaur look as a bone skull, and we thought, well, why not? Let's see what that bird skull looks like as a skull, as a real thing, and sort of say oh, this is what they were drawing from when they made that on there. And then we just did the Rancor skull. That was fun. And if people like that sort of stuff, we have some ideas for other ones. So if you like that, join that Regal Facebook group and let us know that you like the skull collection. You want to see more of that, because if so, we have some ideas.
As a paleontologist, I love skulls.
I was going to say, as a spooky goth girl,
right?
I like skulls.
and as a special effects makeup nerd, I love skulls.
We all love skulls,
that brings
man.
us all together.
So we have the Venn diagram.
Oh my
God.
God.
That's right. There's the Venn diagram. I love it. And in the middle, skulls.
Skulls.
But the Venn diagram should somehow form the eyes and nostrils of a skull. When you do it, the intersects. That would be amazing.
The ideas.
Spooky goth girl, paleontologist, makeup guy, makeup nerd. Yeah. I absolutely love that stuff. I love, on the Rancor one, the way we did it is, you have to be a little tongue-in-cheek about it. You can't do what that skull would really look like. Jim, have you ever seen the meme where it's somebody shows a hippo skull and then what the special effect artist thought the creature looked like?
Well, it's a lot of times this is what a paleontologist would make of the hippo skull or something and you're looking at what on earth is that?
Right.
A horse skull is similar, it's just weird.
Horse skulls are crazy. But so with the Rancor, we have to be a little more literal with it. It's there's some stuff in the jowls that hangs down that I'm sure would just be sacks of fat on the creature, but we actually gave them some bony ridges so that you give some people some visual hooks to lock into so they know what they're looking at. But it's really neat doing interpretations of these creatures as bones and as skulls, and I think the response to the Rancor one's been good. People have bought it. We've made a bunch of them. So I would love to carry on with that line. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it'd be it's just fun. It's a fun place to explore, and it's not in your face. It's stealth geek, you know. It's not like pure Star Wars nerdery. You could have that on a shelf of other miscellaneous artifacts, and it would just look cool, you know. And you don't need to say what it is necessarily. Just the people who know.
Yeah.
I think level of stealth geek is trying to put it in front of my wife, and if she doesn't question it, which there's a very fine line there.
Yeah. We always used to say in screen use prop collecting, when you're trying to when you're putting something on display, the amount that you have to say about the piece in the display is inversely proportional to the recognizability of the piece itself. You know, and what we used to call it was the mom test. If you had a Darth Vader bust on your shelf and your mom comes in, she's going to go, "Oh, look, Darth Vader," you know, or whatever. And it's like, okay, you know, pass the mom test. She knew what it was. You don't need to have a big plaque that says Darth Vader was the villain in the first 3 Star Wars. He returned in such and such. Like, no, it doesn't matter. You know exactly what that is. You could put a little logo plaque next to it if you're going to explain the source of it. If it's a screen use mask or something, it might say Star Wars original mask from the film or whatever. But you don't have to say much. And I think Stealth Geek has a similar sort of thing. It's like if the you know, how much do you have to describe it to someone to get across what it is? And the weird thing is, in the case of a screen use prop, the less you have to say about it, clearly the better that piece is. In my opinion, on the decor stuff, the more you have to tell someone what it is, the more in that it is, the cooler it is to me. The more it's like you're in the club, you know what you're talking about. You're the super fan. You're the it getter, you know. And to me, it's Boba Fett giving Boosh the nod in Return of the Jedi. You know, it's like, oh, nicely done. I see what you got there. You know, it's like, so if you're our kind of fan, you're gonna immediately know what this stuff is. You're gonna want to put it on your shelf, and then your friends who are that kind of fan are gonna come over and go, oh, that's cool.
That's what I was thinking of, things from the prequels that would fit your kind of your selection of items. And the ones, yeah, one of the ones that jumps out at me are the statues, the Palpatine's statues.
Yeah, those are
I think in Revenge. I'm like, because I'm trying to think, I'm like, what in the prequels would you gravitate to? Because it's never the thing in your face.
Right.
It's always the stuff in the background.
I mean, yeah, things like those statues are great. I don't remember where it ended up. We actually did a whole design process with someone who was looking at like the Emperor's desk designs. I think we wound up in a completely different place. It started with that, and then it morphed into something totally different. But that was more for a one-off thing. I think, you know, to me, the really fertile ground in the prequels is similar to the Return of the Jedi stuff we're doing with the concept maquettes and the character concepts.
Yeah.
They are what's neat about the prequel ones is, you know, and this happens a lot. First wave of something, like the first movie of something, everything is done on the cheap. Everything is done quick. Everything is done catch as catch can by whoever can do it. So, you know, Return of the Jedi comes around and they're doing the maquettes for the creatures and things like that. And they're loose, they're rough. They're artists getting an idea down. And these are guys that are, you know, brilliant sculptors, guys and girls, because you also had Judy Elkins doing some of them and things like that. But they're just, you know, they're doing maquettes and they know that's the work they're doing. By the time you get to the prequels, the idea of working on a Star Wars movie is such a lofty goal to any artist that was working in film, that and the budgets are such and the timing is such and the longer pre-production time that you had people going in there and doing insanely detailed and beautiful sculpts, stuff that is so far beyond what you would normally think of as a concept maquette in terms of the level of detail and how tight the characters are dialed in and things like that. And it's that different mindset of working on it, and I see it all the time from even in other films and things like that, where you have that next generation going in and doing their take on something, and it's like the work goes, it's a notch above because these are people who grew up on the other ones and want to outdo it. So anyway, the maquettes are a fertile ground, I think, on the prequels. There are really wonderful designs and beautiful sculptures that I think people would love to have on their shelves as well. But yeah, the stuff you're talking about is that's exactly the sort of thing we would look at.
So, any other questions before we let Tom get on with his day?
No, that was great. Thank you very much for your time. And yeah.
Thanks for having me again. I hope
yes, definitely.
I hope this does well. We're going to have to we'll have to make a big social push if we're going to outdo episode 14.
Oh yes,
absolutely.
I didn't mention during the show. I forgot. But you share a lot of photos of your process as you're going through, and like you're like your studio photos and stuff. And one of the most disturbing photos you have ever shared was the wall of Chewbacca heads, just the heads of like a table or something. I'm like, it's just
fuzzy guy. He's fine. He's okay.
He's okay. He's all right. He just removed his head really quickly. He's okay.
Fine. It was quick. He noticed. After he abandoned Han, we had to teach him a lesson. Yeah,
he had to learn.
It's funny. I love a good group shot like that, because like when you put so much blood, sweat, and tears into making stuff, and when you have a run like that where we did 50 of those at the same time, and we've done that now a few times with Chewbacca and various different projects, but like to have that kind of run all at the same time, we all put all this effort into it. It feels like such an achievement. And it is nice to put them in one place and to get that wide shot and be like, we did all of this, and every one of those was really cool. So it is nice to do that. But it was funny. We put it up and we had a few people who were like, Wookiee hunting should be outlawed, and, all of this kind of funny comments and things. But I think most people see it for what it is and appreciate the achievement, appreciate the work, and see the pride in our crew's faces as they stand among their prey. I mean, their nice Chewbacca bust that they've done.
Their work is gorgeous on everything you guys put out. So it
really is exquisite.
They make me look very good. My biggest regret in business is that I named Tom Spina Designs after myself, because it leads to a lot of people saying Tom Spina does the best restoration work, and it's like, well, I mean, that's a lot of that is me and my developments and stuff there, but it is a team of folks that make me look good, that do this all the time, and I will always give credit to them over myself. That they consistently are working so hard, and they have so much in front of them, especially right now, that I depend on them, and I appreciate them so much.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to minimize, because everything you post highlights their work, and they are top notch. Like literally,
the team is clearly excellent, just absolutely excellent. Can't wait to see what everyone keeps putting out. It's very exciting.
There's a lot more coming. There really is. Great. And it's exciting for us. I wish we could tell people more about what's coming, but you gotta be a little measured about that. But I also I wish that we could just put it all out. Like that's my problem is just we look at it and we're just like, oh God, that's so cool. We've got to do that. It's like, oh no, this is so cool. We got to do this. Oh no, we got to make that next. And it's just, it is not easy to choose what the next thing is going to be, because let's face it, mildly obsessed. We discussed this earlier. Star Wars, a lot of depth, the bench depth, like the sports ball. And that equals an insane number of things that I want to do at all times. And I just can't wait to share whatever the next one happens to be at any given time.
All right. Why don't you plug your how you want people to follow you or get a hold of you?
Oh, yeah. So people can find us at Tom Spina Designs everywhere. That's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. There's others, Pinterest. There's a bunch of them. Definitely go follow us on YouTube. If you like the behind the scenes, we've been doing these extended interviews I've done with the folks that made the creatures for Return of the Jedi. And so go find the TSD YouTube page and find the Regal Robot YouTube page. Follow both of those. Give them a sub. Check out the videos. I think they're really, really fun and engaging chats. I have so much fun talking to those people. I would love more folks to see and share those and get them out there. And then Regal Robot, at Regal Robot everywhere. And go to the website, sign up for that newsletter. We'll tell you about all this new stuff I couldn't tell you about. As soon as I can tell you about it, we'll do it there. And if you're on Facebook, please do visit us on the Regal Robot Fan and Collector Showcase group. It's much more laid back than the official page. It's a lot more interactive, and it's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, it was absolute pleasure having you on. I love chatting with you. I definitely get more time with you here than at any of the celebrations where you're running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
I feel like at this celebration in particular, I had people that would come up to me one day, and I believe you were even one of them, and then came up to me 2 days later and had to go like, it's Jim. And oh, right. Okay. Like, I was fried at this show. So anyone who had to come up to me more than once and introduce yourself, I'm putting out an official apology right now. But I can blame the hard work, late nights, and too many people.
That's understandable.
That's very fair.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad to have had you on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure chatting. And everybody have a good rest of your day.